We have been using length for various CSS properties like say font size, margin, padding, width, border. So we use length like in pixels, percentage, and there are some other units too. So let's look in detail what these units are. There are absolute lengths and relative lengths too. So okay, let's take header for instance. Header's height. Now header's height I could even give in centimeters, right? So I'm gonna give in centimeters. So these are all absolute lengths. Absolute lengths as in no matter which device you see. So this is 12 centimeter, right? I'm looking this in a laptop. So we have, I believe, this media. Let me disable this. So no matter what device you see, your header will be 12 centimeters. So that is what absolute lengths are. So centimeter is centimeter, right? No matter you scale it in a laptop or a smartphone. Likewise, you also have inches. Just give in. It's going to be pretty huge. See? Instead, I'll just give 1.2. So this is also absolute, like it's fixed, and you have something called millimeter, which is also absolute too. The units that you use in your real time, real life applications, all that are absolute lengths. And there is pixels, you would know. Pixels are those tiny dots. So these tiny dots that form 120 pixels is what you see. But we have a separate video on pixels, you could refer that. And then there is point. Now point is nothing but 1/72th of an inch. So this is what a 1 point is. So we are looking at 120 points here. Okay, so these are all absolute lengths: centimeter, millimeter, inch, pixels, and points. Next comes relative lengths. Now the one we would be using most of the time would be relative length, as these length would change accordingly to the to its container, to its parent container, or even the screen size. Now we have 120 points here. It's the header, right? So let's say font size is 30 pixels. Okay, so this changes. Line height, I can say 2 em. So what is em? 1 em is equal to the value of the font size of the same element. So I'm saying font size is 30 pixels. So line height 2 em is 2 into 30 pixels. So which becomes 60 pixels. So line height is 60 pixels now. That is why it got misaligned. I hope you remember that when we have same line height and height, it is aligned well. So when I say 4 em, it becomes 120 pixels, right? So it is aligned well now. And then comes rem. Let's see what rem is. The root will have a font size. Let's say the font size of this root is 10 pixel. So 1 rem is equal to the font size of the root element. Now this becomes 20 pixels now. to rem is 20 pixels now. Let's look at the percentage element now. Okay, we already have it here. So the div class left is, it says the width is 20%. When any element has the width as in percentage units, all it means is 20% of its container. So content is the container. So content is huge. So like the whole 100%, 20% of the container is this size. So if the container reduces, see this line also reduces because the container size is reduced, 20% of the container is also reduced. So that's what we gave here. But if you give 20 VW, that is basically 20% of viewport width, meaning this width that we see here, the whole width that we see here. So when you reduce that, that is also reduced. But if you notice, the width of the content and the width of this VW is going to be same as we keep adjusting because content is the whole width now. So if I reduce this, the width is also reduced. The content width is also reduced. Also, the viewport width is also reduced. Here I have given the viewport value. So we have to use it cautiously where we have to use percentage and where we have to use the viewport width. Now we'll see in another video how the percentage and viewport units have to be used twice. Like how we have VW here, you can also have VH. VH is nothing but viewport height. So instead of height, this pixels, you could also give 50 viewport height, which is 50% of viewport height. So this is what it tries to do now. Now again reduced. So you have to be cautious about whether to give viewport height or width or percentage. Okay, there is one more interesting unit which is called the Vmin and the Vmax. So what Vmin and Vmax does is, if we say 10 of Vmin, it will take 10% of whichever is minimum. Here in my laptop, the height is minimum. So it will take 10% of my height. Okay. But if I say 10 Vmax, it will take 10% of the width, which is large in a laptop. Now, we'll see in a responsive design. This is how a laptop is. But when I keep shrinking, this line also gets down, right? See, it keeps changing. Now, that's because now the max was width. Now, as I go down, this max becomes the height. Height is a max now. So it calculates based on that. So it is pretty handy when you have to design responsive web pages, which works well in smartphones and your laptop. Same if you see in 10 Vmin. So the 10% of height was calculated. Now as you reduce the screen size, the 10% of width will be calculated. So this all depends on what screen you use. Now these all come handy. Now, if you have noticed, we didn't write so many if conditions here. Within the same property, I changed the units. We didn't write many if conditions here. All we did was just change the units and it works perfectly well with all the devices. We'll see in some more examples how perfect that this viewport units works well than the media queries.